Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'll be showing you how I completely transform my garage floors using the Rust-Oleum RockSolid epoxy flooring kit from Home Depot. Plus a few other details I added that you'll see later on in the video. As always guys, if you like the content while you're watching, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you can always stay up to date on my videos. Alright, let's jump back to last week to when I started this project. Alright guys, so the first step of this project is something that I have not been looking forward to, and that is clearing out this garage. So one problem I've had since moving in here is just having cardboard boxes upon cardboard boxes accumulating in the garage from buying furniture, other stuff. Boxes over there from the 10 drawer cart mod I just did, just piling up. And the recycling only comes every other week, and I only have one bin, so it's been hard to get all this broken down and taken out every other week. But I'm hoping this is the last of it, so I'm gonna start collecting all this, putting it in the bin, and trying to find somewhere else to put it for now. And then for everything else, I'm gonna have to move it out the garage, the 2 bikes, all the other shop equipment. I'm probably gonna put my toolbox inside for now. But yeah, all this stuff needs to come out the garage and basically be put somewhere else so I can have access to all the floor space so I can start with the prep work. All right, so for the epoxy to adhere properly to the floor, you definitely need the floor to be extremely clean. So the first step to getting the floor clean is just me going through with the broom, as you can see, and picking up most of the major debris and getting most of the dust off the concrete. After that, I just went through with the 6-inch putty knife to scrape off any unwanted materials from the concrete. There was some expanding foam left over from construction and some paint on the floor from when I was painting the walls, so I just went through to clean all that up. And you can see me go through and just do one final sweep here before wetting the floor. The instructions call for the floor to be damp before starting the acid etch, so that's what I'm doing here. My garden hose on the shower setting. Then I went through with the broom just to scrub off any excess dirt that might have been remaining, and also to go through and kind of get rid of any of the excess water, said not to leave any standing puddles on the floor. Now I'm actually pouring the acid etch onto the concrete. The kit recommended using a plastic watering can, so that's what I got from Home Depot. It has a 2-gallon can, which is actually the perfect size to be mixed with one of the pouches that came with the kit, which is just enough to do half of the garage floor. Once I covered this one section, I went back with the broom and kind of brushed everything out to make sure the etch was getting into all the pores of the concrete and I was getting proper coverage of the etch on this section. Next, I repeat those steps again on the next section of concrete, just pouring down the acid etch and then going through with the broom and brushing it in. Then after that, I kind of just sat and stared at it and heard it doing its magic. You can kind of hear, if you listen closely, all the sizzling and bubbling. That's it kind of going and eating away at the concrete, opening up some of the pores so that the epoxy could adhere better. But I kind of just worked half the garage at a time, so I was waiting for this half and then just basically repeat the next steps for the second half of the garage. Also, before you go ahead and do the second half of the garage, you're going to make sure that your acid etch isn't left to sit and dry on the concrete, so you're going to make sure you brush it out. After the acid etch was sitting for around 10 minutes or so, I could hear the sizzling noise start to quiet down, so I figured it was pretty much done doing its job. After that, I went back through with the brush and scrubbed and rinsed it down about 3 times or so just to make sure I got all the rest of the acid etch off. Alright, now that the concrete has been completely etched and it's been drying for a little over 2 days, it's time to address these cracks in the concrete. To do this, I'm going to be using this Concrete Patch and Repair by Rust-Oleum, the same brand that makes the epoxy I'm going to be laying down. This is a pretty simple 2-part epoxy mix. You just mix the part A with the part B, like you see me doing here. I just grabbed a spare piece of cardboard. After mixing it up till the colors looked even, I just went through and used my putty knife to start placing it down on the ground pretty liberally. Some people say you need to sand this after it's dry, but I didn't, and I didn't see any issues in my end result. I just tried to get it as flat as I can just using my putty knife. But pretty much anywhere you have any small cracks in the concrete, just go through with this stuff and try to get them filled in and leveled out as best as you can. My garage wasn't too bad. I just had a couple cracks you could see here, and then one long one that went all the way up to the front of the garage door that I had to fill in. After letting this stuff dry overnight, it hardened up pretty good, and now at this point the rest of the garage floor is also completely dry and we are ready to actually start laying down the epoxy coating. The epoxy itself is a 2-part epoxy, and it comes in this bag that makes it really easy to mix. You just roll the part A into the part B like you just saw me do, and then you mix it up in the bag for about 2 minutes or so. And after you got it mixed up, you don't have to pour it into a paint tray or anything. You just cut a little slit in the corner of the bag here, and then you can pour it straight onto the floor. So one thing I would do if I was doing this again is I would cut that slit a little smaller just so I could make it easier to control the amount of epoxy that's actually coming out of the package. Now I'm just pouring out the first strips of epoxy onto the floor closer to the edge of the wall so I can cut them in with my paintbrush. And I was starting to notice here that it was a little difficult to control the actual amount I was pouring out, and when I started to wish that I had cut that slit in the bag a little smaller. Now I'm just using a regular paintbrush to cut in the epoxy along the edge of the wall before I pour out the rest for this section and get the roller out and start trying to evenly spread it out. Laying down the epoxy was definitely the most satisfying part of the project. After doing all that boring cleaning and prep work, it was nice to finally feel like some progress was being made. However, this was also the same time in the project where I ran into a pretty big issue. So looking at the amount of product I just poured onto the floor, there was only about a fifth of the bag remaining, and the kit only came with 2 bags, so I figured I'd use one for one half of the garage and one for the other. But at this point in time, I realized there was not going to be nearly enough epoxy in one bag to finish half of the garage floor. The mistake I made was thinking I might be able to still use the one bag to cover half the garage floor by pouring what was left of the bag on the other section of the garage floor. You can kind of see in the right side of the screen that I had poured some out closer to the walls like I did earlier, but really nothing came out, or not nearly enough to spread it out enough to cover the entire section of the floor. What I should have done was just poured the little bit that was left in the bag onto the initial section I started with so that I didn't have to spread it out so thin. This does eventually create some coverage issues that you'll see later on in the video. Here I'm just throwing down the flakes. I found it easiest to throw it straight up in the air, and when they fell down it kind of create more of a scattered pattern. If I threw it too close to the ground, I feel like they all kind of lumped in one section, so I just tried my best to try to keep it as even as possible. At this point, I was fully committed to using 2 kits worth of product. So here, this is the second bag I was using, and it actually turned out being the perfect amount of epoxy to get a nice thick coating on just this one 10 by 10 section of my garage floor. This is immediately after having finished the last half of the garage, and it's turning out great. As you can see, it's super glossy, and it's not just because the paint's wet right now. As you'll see in the next clip, after it dries, it still looks super glossy. The flakes were laying down great after using the proper amount of epoxy on this half of the garage. And if you stick around for a second, you also see a couple other things I did to make this look even better. After letting the floor dry for about 2 days, as you can see, it's still super shiny. At this point, it's pretty much dry now, and I'm ready to move on to the next step, which is filling in the expansion joints, or the control joints that are cut in the garage floor. So the first step to this is just taking some ordinary play sand and pouring it into the control joint about halfway so that there is maybe about a 1/4 inch of space left to the top of the garage floor. And the point of this is just to give a nice bed of material for the Sikaflex sealant that I'm going to use to lay on, so I don't have to use too much of that because it's more expensive. And this doesn't have to be perfect. I just used my finger and ran across it to get it to a height that I think looked about right. And then after that, I just used this little brush to go ahead and get rid of any excess sand. And now I'm just here using the Sikaflex self-leveling sealant. I'll put a link down in the description below to just fill in the rest of the control joint. And here I accidentally made the mistake of not putting enough play sand in the control joint at first. So after I finished this section, I realized I was kind of using up all my sealant pretty quickly. So after I finished this, I went through on the rest of the parts that didn't have any sealant yet and filled in a little more play sand so I could use less sealant. In this clip, you can see how the sand is a lot closer to the top of the control joint, and at this point I was getting a lot more coverage out of just one bottle of the sealant. And the main reason I'm doing this is just to keep all the dirt and debris from falling into those cracks and making it a lot harder to clean or sweep the garage floor when it gets dirty. The last thing I did that I think had a huge effect on the outcome of the garage was painting this little border of concrete here on the foundation black. This really tied everything together and kind of got rid of the unfinished look of just having the raw concrete there. There were a few other options I could have gone with, like adding epoxy on here or getting some type of trim board to cover up most of the concrete, but I think that this black paint was just the cheapest, and it helped me save some more epoxy to actually go on the floor where it needs the tough covers the most. This masonry paint by Barry actually surprised me by how well it was covering on this dry concrete. I really didn't put that much time into prepping it for the paint. It stuck on there and I didn't need to do an extra coat or anything, and it looked fine. But I'll put a link down in the description for the exact product I used. And for the last modification I did was painting the frame for the garage door opener, which I really should have done when I was painting the walls. But I think when I was painting the walls, I had an idea that I was going to paint this part black. I'm not sure why. I think it ended up being way nicer just blending in with the same color as the garage, so I went back and just got some leftover gray paint that I used for the walls and then ended up painting this border for the garage door opener too, and I think it came out really good. Alright guys, as you can see, after about a week's worth of work, the garage floor came out beautifully. It looks way better than I was expecting it to come out. I didn't have very high expectations considering this is the first time I'm doing any type of epoxy flooring work, but it came out a lot better than I thought it would. I love the high gloss on the floor. It makes it look super clean. I've been having everyone say that it looks too wet and that they don't want to step in it because it looks like it's still drying. Yeah, but I love the shiny look. I love the extra speckles, so I think definitely going and getting the extra 2 pouches of speckles for each half of the garage was definitely worth it. They covered a lot more. I think that the amount of flakes that came with the original 2 kits would definitely not have been enough to give me the look that I was going for. I'm really happy with how sealing the control joints turned out. I definitely hate having them exposed like they were before and how they come usually, because just all that dirt and everything falls down in there and it makes it super hard to clean out. Hopefully this will keep everything on the surface and on the same level, so it'll make it a lot easier to go through and sweep and clean when things get dirty. Also loving the black edge trim that I did on the foundation. It really just separates the floor from the walls and makes everything look a lot cleaner. As I was saying before, I was looking into putting some type of trim or how to make it look a lot cleaner. And I think this definitely was the best solution for cleaning it up without having to spend a lot of extra money on materials. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about some of the obvious issues I ran into throughout the video. The first one being the amount of coverage that you get out of the Rust-Oleum RockSolid epoxy kits. So they advertise that each kit could do about a 2.5 car garage. I really don't think that's true. As I've seen a lot of other people say, I didn't really believe them, but after going through and starting the process of putting it on there, it became quickly apparent that the one kit would definitely not cover the entire 2-car garage. And my garage is only a 20 by 20 again, so it's not a huge 2-car garage. It's very average size. So I think that you should definitely, if you're looking into getting the kit, think about getting 2, and I'll show you exactly why here now. So what ended up happening was that after I started back here over here in this corner, and when I realized that it wouldn't be enough when I got to about halfway through the square, and I was realizing that the one bag I got that I plan on using for both of these squares was getting very light. And you'd see me in the video, I poured out most of the concrete and I tried to spread it out, and then once I realized that, I try to go through and spread as much as I can on that side, and when I ran out and still had like 3/4 of this left, I realized I was going to have to just use one bag for these 2. And so making that mistake and putting too much material on this side at first, you can see that I had to really start spreading it out over here and kind of see the difference on how thin it is over here versus me doing a proper allocation of material on this slab over here. So hopefully you can see this on the camera, but over here it's very, very glossy, very shiny. You can tell that there's a lot of thick material buildup on the floor right there. It's covering the chips very well. And then over here you can see how much more dull it is, and you can actually see all the texture of the concrete because it's such a thin layer of epoxy. And that's exactly how the entire garage would look if I tried to be sparing with the material and spread out just one kit's worth of material on the entire floor. I think if I went ahead and did that, I definitely would not be as happy with the finish as I am right now, because I love over here how it looks super shiny, super glossy, which is how it looks majority of the floor. But then you can just see those 2 spots I made mistakes on over here where I had to spread it out a little more because I wasn't planning on using 2 kits worth of material. And I'm not saying it's impossible to do it with just one kit. I'm sure it is, but again, I just think that you'll end up with your whole floor looking kind of dull in areas like it is here, and you'll see more of the texture of the actual concrete instead of getting a nice even layer of nice glossy epoxy like it looks over here. And you can even tell in this spot a lot better where this is kind of a place where I maybe use just my fault. I miss going through and rolling over this really good with the roller, but you can even see some bare concrete poking through here. But I'm sure that if I tried to sparingly use just one kit to do the whole garage, I'm sure there'd be plenty of more spots like that would have popped up everywhere else. So as far as pricing for the kits, I think at Home Depot, one kit will run you about roughly $300. I definitely did not want to spend that much money, especially seeing as I had to use 2 of them. So what I did was I actually went through and tried to Google, see if there's anywhere I could find them for cheaper. I actually ended up finding them on eBay for almost half the price, which is where I ordered both my kits from. And I'm not sure if these are like returns maybe that some of the store managers just take home and post on eBay or whatever. If you don't trust it, you can definitely go to Home Depot and pay the average retail price, but I did not want to do that. My floor came out fine, as you can see here, but if you don't want to do that, you can definitely go to Home Depot, try to find a sale and get them there. But the 2 kits I ordered from eBay seemed like they were fine, and they seemed to get the job done pretty well. All in all, I'm super excited how the floor came out. I'm not too bummed about the 2 areas where I kind of messed up and the epoxy coating's a little dull. You know, it's a garage floor. It looks way better than it did before, and it's at least protected now from getting any major stains or stuff like that. I love the black border, kind of breaks everything up, makes it look a lot cleaner, and I'm also very glad I did painted the bracing for the garage door opener right there, so that bare wood is now blending into the wall. But definitely guys, if you are doing this by yourself at home, just make sure you take a lot of time during the prep phase, which is the most important phase, to make sure your garage floor is really clean. As you can see, I didn't have to do too much on my part because my concrete was brand new, but if you have older concrete in your home that has more stains and stuff, you probably have to do a couple more steps, like going through and thoroughly degreasing it, getting rid of all those spots and pressure washing it so all that oil and stuff and dirt comes up. But as long as you're able to get your garage floor cleaned out, get all the stains and stuff off, get the etch down really good, I think rolling on the actual epoxy and applying the flakes was actually the easiest part of the whole project. So I doubt you guys will have any issues doing it yourself. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like down below. And if you enjoyed the content, please subscribe so you can see some of my future videos and more of the projects I have coming out. I think the next thing I kind of want to do in the garage after I get everything back in here, I have some work to do on my cars and my motorcycles, but the next thing for the actual garage is I would love to build a custom shelving setup back here, so I have some cabinets and also put a workbench back there. So that's one project that's definitely coming in the future. So if you guys are interested in that, please be sure to subscribe and have a great day.